Hi everyone. In order to help you prepare for your N400 interview, today I will go over the most asked personal questions. Most of applicants were asked these questions during the US Citizenship Interview. As you know, during the US Citizenship Interview, the officer will review your background in order to verify your good moral character. This is the most important part, that the officer concludes whether a green card holder would be a good fit for US citizenship. So you must speak and show them you are a good person. This video is also an English listening practice for your interview. Please prepare your own answers and practice to answer each question. This not only improves your English listening and speaking skills, but also helps you build up your confidence for your actual interview. Are you ready? Let's get started. Next questions are information about you, such as your name, age, social security number, date of birth, and country. What is your current legal name? What is your current legal name? What is your last name? What is your last name? What is your first name? What is your first name? What is the name that appears on your green card? What is the name that appears on your green card? Have you used any other names since birth? Have you used any other names since birth? Have you had other names? Have you had other names? Have you ever changed your name? Have you ever changed your name? Do you want to change your name? Do you want to change your name? What name do you want on your naturalization certificate? What name do you want on your naturalization certificate? What is your social security number? What is your social security number? What's your date of birth? What's your date of birth? What is your country of birth? What is your country of birth? Where were you born? Where were you born? Where are you from? Where are you from? What is your country of nationality? What is your country of nationality? Are you a citizen of any other country? Are you a citizen of any other country? The first part are some questions regarding your eligibility. How are you eligible to be a citizen? How are you eligible to be a citizen? When did you become a permanent resident? When did you become a permanent resident? When did you get your green card? When did you get your green card? Become a permanent resident and get your green card have the same meaning. It means you are a green card holder. How long have you been a permanent resident? How long have you been a permanent resident? How did you get your green card? How did you get your green card? Who sponsored your green card? Who sponsored your green card? All right, I am moving on to the questions regarding your contact information, such as phone number, address, or residence history. What is your phone number? What is your phone number? What is your current address? What is your current address? What is your mailing address? What is your mailing address? Has your address changed since you sent your application? Has your address changed since you sent your application? Do you rent or own the house? Do you rent or own the house? Who do you currently live with? Who do you currently live with? How long have you lived at your current address? How long have you lived at your current address? What was your previous address? What was your previous address? Where did you live before? Where did you live before? When did you move to that address? When did you move to that address? Have you lived anywhere else in the last 5 years? Have you lived anywhere else in the last 5 years? All right, there are some questions regarding your biography, like your race, your height, your weight. How tall are you? How tall are you? How much do you weigh? How much do you weigh? What is your race? What is your race? Are you Hispanic or Latino? Are you Hispanic or Latino? Next are the questions about your employment. What is your occupation? What is your occupation? Are you currently working? Are you currently working? Where do you work? Where do you work? How long have you worked there? How long have you worked there? How long have you had that job? How long have you had that job? Have you worked anywhere else in the last 5 years? Have you worked anywhere else in the last 5 years? What kind of work do you do? What kind of work do you do? Where did you work before? Where did you work before? When did you leave that job? When did you leave that job? How do you support yourself? How do you support yourself? The next questions are about your parents. Is your mother or father a US citizen? Is your mother or father a US citizen? Are either of your parents a US citizen? Are either of your parents a US citizen? If your parents are not US citizens, the questions are pretty simple. Now, here are the questions about your marital status. This is also an important part in case you applied for US citizenship based on your marriage. What is your marital status? What is your marital status? Are you currently single, married, divorced, or widowed? Are you currently single, married, divorced, or widowed? Did you ever marry before? Did you ever marry before? How many times have you been married? How many times have you been married? What is your spouse's full name? What is your spouse's full name? Where did you get married? Where did you get married? What is your spouse's birth date? What is your spouse's birth date? Where does your spouse live? Where does your spouse live? Is your spouse a US citizen? Is your spouse a US citizen? What is your spouse's country of origin? What is your spouse's country of origin? What is your spouse's immigration status? What is your spouse's immigration status? Is your spouse a permanent resident? Is your spouse a permanent resident? Does your spouse live with you? Does your spouse live with you? How many times has your spouse been married? How many times has your spouse been married? Next questions are about your children, such as your children's name, date of birth, or immigration status. Do you have any children? Do you have any children? How many children do you have? How many children do you have? Do you have any stepchildren? Do you have any stepchildren? Do you have any adopted children? Do you have any adopted children? What is your children's relationship to you? What is your children's relationship to you? Are your children biological to you? Are your children biological to you? What are your children's names? What are your children's names? What are your children's dates of birth? What are your children's dates of birth? When were your children born? When were your children born? Do your children live with you? Do your children live with you? Are your children US citizens? Are your children US citizens? Are your children permanent residents? Are your children permanent residents? Do you have any children from the previous marriage? Do you have any children from the previous marriage? Next questions are relating to time outside the U.S. This part is very important because it affects directly to your naturalization eligibility. Please have your answer ready in case you have some trips outside the U.S. Have you taken any trips outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? Have you taken any trips outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? Have you traveled outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? Have you traveled outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? Did you leave the U.S. for more than 6 months? Did you leave the U.S. for more than 6 months? How many days were you outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? How many days were you outside the U.S. in the last 5 years? How many trips have you taken in the last 5 years? How many trips have you taken in the last 5 years? Did you take any other trips outside the U.S.? Did you take any other trips outside the U.S.? Where did you go? Where did you go? When did you leave the U.S.? When did you leave the U.S.? When did you return? When did you return? How long were you gone? How long were you gone? Why did you leave the U.S.? Why did you leave the U.S.? For what purpose? For what purpose?